The midnight train always felt different. The hum of the tracks was softer, the silence inside the carriage heavier. Few dared to ride it, and those who did often buried themselves behind newspapers or phones, too tired to notice the strange aura that clung to the journey. But I noticed. I had no choice. The first night I saw him, the train was nearly empty. Only 4 passengers scattered along the dimly lit carriage, an elderly man asleep by the window, a woman scrolling through her phone, and me, too restless to sit still. The 4th sat at the farthest end, where the shadows seemed thicker, the light above his seat flickering. He didn't move, didn't blink. His pale face was angled just enough that I couldn't catch the full shape of it, only the hollow outline and the sharp line of his jaw. I tried not to stare, but there was something wrong. Something my instincts clawed at me to notice. His hands rested in his lap, too still, too rigid, as if carved from bone rather than flesh. When the train entered the tunnel, the lights went out for only a second. One blinked. When they came back, the seat at the far end was empty, gone. Not a sound, not a shuffle of feet, no door opening, no footsteps passing. The phantom passenger had vanished. I laughed nervously, convincing myself he must have slipped into another carriage, though deep down I knew no one could move that silently in such a small space. I leaned forward, scanning the carriage, even checked the reflection in the window. Only 3 of us remained. The woman with the phone yawned, unaware. The old man still slept. And me, my heart pounding against my ribs like a frantic warning. When the train screeched to its stop, I rushed out, the cold night air swallowing me whole. By the time I reached the station exit, I was already doubting myself. Maybe exhaustion was twisting my vision. Maybe he was never really there. But as I stepped into the street, I caught it, my reflection in the glass doors of the station. And behind me, just over my shoulder, a pale face lingered in the blur of the reflection. I spun around. The street was empty. The midnight train had carried a passenger who shouldn't exist. And somehow, I hadn't left him behind. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw. Who would believe me? A pale figure vanishing on a train, only to appear in my reflection afterward. It sounded like the half-dreams of someone who'd had too much coffee and too little sleep. But I couldn't shake it. That image of his hollow face lingered, burned into the back of my eyelids whenever I blinked. Days passed, and still I avoided the midnight train. I thought maybe if I pretended it never happened, the memory would rot away like old smoke. Until one night, when I had no choice. Work dragged me late, and by the time I reached the station, the clock read 12:03. The midnight train was my only way home. The platform was deserted, a hollow wind whistling through the tunnels as the train screeched into place. The doors hissed open. Inside, it looked normal. A couple of stragglers sat scattered, students maybe, or shift workers. I chose a seat by the window, pulling my jacket tighter as the carriage jolted forward. For the first few minutes, nothing seemed unusual. My pulse began to settle. Then I felt it, that pressure, the sensation of being watched. It crawled up my spine like ice water. I turned slowly, and there, at the very end of the carriage, he sat again, the phantom passenger. Same seat, same flickering light above him, his body rigid, his hands folded neatly, his head angled just slightly away, as though mocking me with a half-hidden face. I froze, breath shallow. The other passengers seemed blind to him. No one turned their heads. No one shifted nervously. Only me. When we passed through the tunnel, the lights flickered. One blink. I braced myself. But this time he was still there. Only now his head had turned. Slowly, sharply, his eyes locked on mine. Pale, bottomless eyes, empty as glass. I gasped, pressing myself against the window. My reflection trembled in the glass. But his reflection wasn't there. The train lurched, and I snapped my gaze away, heart hammering. When I dared to look again, his seat was empty. A rush of cold air swept down the carriage, even though the windows were sealed. I shivered violently, clutching the metal pole beside me until my knuckles turned white. The train screeched into the next station, and I bolted. But as I stumbled out onto the platform, chest heaving, I saw it again. In the dark glass of the closing train doors, his face, not behind me this time, but beside me, watching. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the windows felt like him, waiting, watching. By morning, exhaustion made me question myself. Had I imagined it all? Hallucinations, maybe? Stress could play tricks. I almost convinced myself. Until I reached the station again the following night. I wasn't supposed to take the midnight train. My shift ended earlier this time, and the last evening service was still running. I sighed with relief, stepping into the carriage packed with commuters. Bright lights, chatter, the comforting noise of normal life. No phantom passengers. Or so I thought. The crowd thinned as the train rattled deeper into the night. Stop after stop, passengers disembarked, leaving empty seats. By the time we passed the 12th station, only a handful remained. And then I saw it, not at the far end this time, but 2 rows ahead of me. The same pale figure, rigid, hands folded in his lap. No flickering light above him now. Yet somehow, he still looked blurred, as though the edges of his body refused to sharpen into focus. My stomach twisted. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't hallucinating. He was here. I forced myself to look around. Did no one else see him? The woman across the aisle scrolled through her phone without raising her head. The man near the door yawned, oblivious. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I shifted forward, ready to move carriages, when the figure's head snapped toward me. Instant, violent. Our eyes locked, and I felt it, a crushing weight on my chest, like invisible hands squeezing the air out of me. His lips moved, though no sound escaped. I could only make out the shape of a single word. Stay. I ripped my gaze away and staggered toward the doors, fumbling as the train screeched into the next station. I burst out into the night air, lungs burning. The platform was empty, the silence suffocating. I hurried toward the exit when I froze. The glass of the timetable board reflected me, disheveled, trembling. But I wasn't alone. He stood behind me in the reflection, closer than ever, his hollow eyes burning into mine. I spun around. The platform was empty, but when I turned back to the glass, his reflection remained. And this time, he was smiling, a smile that told me something terrifying. I hadn't escaped the phantom passenger. I had brought him with me. I stopped taking the train, walked home when I could, begged rides when I couldn't. Anything to avoid those midnight carriages. But it didn't matter, because he had already stepped off the train with me. It began with reflections, windows, mirrors, puddles after the rain. Every time I caught my own face, I caught his, always a step behind, always angled as if leaning closer. No one else could see him, to the world. I looked like a man staring at his own frightened reflection, but I knew better. Then came the sounds. The faint scrape of shoes on my floorboards at night, though I lived alone. The whisper of breath just behind my ear as I unlocked my door. I'd whirl around in nothing but silence, my skin crawling with goose flesh. Sleep offered no escape. Each night, the same dream. The midnight train, rattling through endless darkness. And there he sat, still, watching, until the lights flickered. And he would be beside me, close enough for me to feel the cold press of his breath against my cheek. The worst was the phone call. It was just after midnight when it rang. No name, no number, just silence on the other end. I almost hung up until I heard the faint hum of a train in the background, and beneath it, a voice. Hollow, drawn out, stay. I dropped the phone. My hands shook so violently I nearly shattered the screen. By now I was unraveling. Friends told me I looked pale, thinner, distracted. I couldn't explain. How could I? They'd call me insane. But deep down, I wondered if maybe I was. And then, something happened that confirmed my worst fear. I was walking home late, avoiding the station, when I passed a shop window. My reflection stared back, exhausted, haunted. But behind me, I saw him. Not distant, not blurred. He was standing directly at my shoulder, his face pale and sharp, his eyes gleaming with hollow hunger. For the first time, I felt his hand, cold, gripping my arm in the reflection. I stumbled back, heart hammering. When I looked again, he was gone, but the sensation of his grip lingered. Icy fingers burned into my skin. That was when I understood. The phantom passenger wasn't tied to the train anymore. He was tied to me. I couldn't run anymore. No matter how far I walked, how many streets I avoided, he followed. The phantom passenger had become my shadow. Every reflection betrayed me. Shop windows, car mirrors, even the surface of my coffee. He was always there, pale eyes locked onto mine. Each time he looked sharper, more solid, while I, fading, tired, frayed. Then came the night. I heard the sound of the train outside my apartment. Impossible. My building was miles from the station. Yet the rumble shook my walls. The screech of brakes tore through the silence, and the faint hiss of doors opening echoed down my hallway. I froze, listening. And then I heard the footsteps. Slow, even, growing closer. I knew then. He was no longer content to linger in reflections. He wanted me to board. The following midnight, I found myself at the station again. I don't remember leaving my apartment. Don't remember walking the streets. One moment I was staring into the dark. The next, I was standing on the platform. And there it was, the midnight train. Empty, waiting. The doors slid open with a hiss, inviting. My body moved before my mind could resist. Inside, the carriage was silent. Too silent. Every light steady, no flicker, no hum, except for one. At the far end, beneath a shadowed lamp, he sat. Pale, still, hands folded, exactly as I'd first seen him. I wanted to run, but the doors closed behind me. The train lurched forward, dragging me into the dark. I gripped the seat, trembling, my breath clouded in the cold air. And then he stood. Slowly, impossibly, he rose to his feet and began walking toward me. Each step rang like a hammer in my skull. The other seats blurred. The windows melted into black. There was only him. When he reached me, he leaned close, his hollow eyes burning into mine. His lips parted. Stay. The word was not a whisper this time. It thundered through me, a command older than language. My body went cold, heavy, as if sinking into the floor. My reflection in the window flickered, my face pale, hollow, my eyes empty. The train screeched, stopping in a tunnel. The lights flickered once, and when they returned, the seat was empty. No passengers. No me, only the phantom, now sitting in my place. The midnight train had claimed another soul, and somewhere in the next reflection, someone else will see me,